conversation. We're advancing the infrastructure conversation this morning by welcoming our next speaker. It is my pleasure to introduce the United States Transportation Secretary, Elaine Chao. This is her second cabinet appointment. She served as the United States Secretary of Labor from 2001 to 2009 and is the first Asian American woman in history to serve in a cabinet position. Secretary Chao has led a distinguished career in the public, private, and non-profit sectors, and we are honored to welcome her here this morning. Please welcome United States Secretary of Transportation, Elaine Chao.
Thank you, Greg. You know, this might be my first opportunity to formally address NACO as Secretary of Transportation, but I've had the great pleasure of meeting with many of your members, and including your former president, Brian Deslage. You got it. We met last year at a White House infrastructure event, and I want to also give a big shout out to my fellow Kentuckians who are NACO members. Where are they? Right over there. Including Judge Gary Moore of Boone County and Chairman of the NACO Transportation Committee, who paid a very special visit to Washington to invite me to join this event. We also have Brian Moore, CEO and Executive Director of the Kentucky Association of Counties, David Nicholson of Jefferson County Circuit Court Clerk and President of the Kentucky Association of Counties, and of course, Ellen Williams of the Kentucky Association of Counties. So as one proud Kentuckian to another, welcome Kentucky. And I might also add as a personal note that my hubby, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, sends you his best as well. Well, the short film that you just played was a perfect example of the importance of counties in rebuilding and renewing America's infrastructure. As the film says, counties own and maintain 46% of this nation's public roads, 38% of the bridges, and more than a third of the public airports. Counties help pay for 78% of the public transit system. Counties have invested more than $22 billion in sewage and wastewater and operate more than 900 public hospitals. And yet, as many of you know, our infrastructure is aging, and in many cases cannot keep up with the pace of new technology. And so that is why 12 federal government departments have been working on the President's initiative to revitalize our country's infrastructure. The plan involves more than just transportation infrastructure. It also includes energy, drinking and wastewater, rural broadband, and veterans hospitals. The goal of the President's proposal is to stimulate at least $1.5 trillion in infrastructure investments, which includes a minimum of $200 billion in direct federal funding. The guiding principles are quite simple. There are 4 of them. One is to use federal dollars as seed money to incentivize infrastructure investment. Because when the federal government comes into a project, and when a local and state government as well, it speaks volumes about the creditworthiness and the quality of that project. So our involvement is important. Number 2, provide for the needs of rural communities. Number 3, streamline and speed up project delivery. And 4, reduce unnecessary and overly burdensome regulations. And as a former Secretary of Labor, I'm so pleased to note that this administration's infrastructure plan also has a workforce component to help workers access the skills needed to build these projects. In addition, a key element of the proposal is to empower decision-making at the state and local level, because you know best the infrastructure needs of your own communities. Half of the federal funds will go toward incentivizing new state, local, and private sector investments in infrastructure, and these will be competitively awarded. 25% of the federal funds will be dedicated to addressing rural investment needs, because we understand that rural America has different kinds of needs. And these rural infrastructure needs will be prioritized by state and local leaders like you. Since 70% of America's counties are rural, this is good news. 40% or $40 billion of this amount will be allocated by formula, while $10 billion will be performance-based grants to reward states that produce the best results. Now, there are some estimates that say that our country's infrastructure needs as much as $4 trillion in investments. We cannot fund all these infrastructure needs by only the federal government, or only with deficit spending, or by floating bonds or borrowings. Doing so would result in dislocations in the private markets, hinder growth and job creation. So the president's plan allows the private sector to participate in the building of our public infrastructure. And you would be amazed, 26 states in our country do not allow the private sector to participate in the building of public infrastructure. In the last year, many parts of the federal government have been in discussion and consultation with the private sector on ways to help finance our infrastructure needs. America has the largest and most robust capital markets in the world. There are many private sector funds, for example, private pension funds, who want conservative investments like public infrastructure, which have collateral that will not walk away. So there are different ways for the private sector to participate and offer alternative forms of financing, including private activity bonds, operations, different kinds of infrastructure financings, and also asset recycling as well. And the good thing that you might want to keep in mind is that in addition, the private sector helps to allocate risk. Because if a project is not successful, the private sector bears the first loss instead of the taxpayer. But in many states, private pension and investment funds are restricted in their ability to invest in public infrastructure, as I've mentioned. The department recognizes that there's no one-size-fits-all solution, and that different areas of our country requires different solutions. And the private sector investment is one solution, one option that should be allowed to participate where appropriate. So we are not advocating for one solution versus another. That is really up to you. What we are hoping to encourage is that all parties who are interested in participating in helping to build our infrastructure be allowed to do so. There are many other countries, including Australia, France, and England, European countries, who've worked with their private sectors to build and operate infrastructure that has improved lives and led to economic growth. And historically, America's first infrastructure was built with private sector participation, so they should not be excluded. There are many successful models to tap, and for more background on the infrastructure plan, there are tons of copies available of the booklet that is entitled The President's Initiative for Rebuilding Infrastructure in America. It contains more details of the infrastructure proposal and its goals, and I hope that you'll find it helpful. The other key part of the President's plan to revitalize our infrastructure and create jobs are streamlining the permitting process and reducing the regulatory burdens on job creators, and that's basically employers. These changes will help to make projects available more quickly for private sector investment dollars. If the permitting process is shorter, it offers less risk to potential investors. So when we say streamlining the permitting process, I want to make it very clear. We're not compromising on the environment, but rather finding common sense ways in which permitting can be allowed to proceed faster. For example, reducing redundant or duplicative processes, or allowing sister agencies to share information rather than require them to each conduct their own studies, or encouraging concurrent processes and approvals rather than sequential. These practices are commonly found in European countries. The department is already making progress in reducing red tape. I'm glad to report we are implementing the President's one federal decision, which was announced last October. All the departments involved in the federal government are involved in working on a new process to handle the permitting of complicated multi-agency projects within the President's new expedited timeline. This means less paperwork and more timely improvements that would better protect the environment and our quality of life. The department has also made progress in reducing regulatory burdens that delay infrastructure projects, raise costs, and hinder job creation. In 2017, the department decreased the regulatory cost by $300 million and is on track to reduce the cost of regulations by more than $500 million in 2018. In addition, the department is working to make the Tiger and Infra grant programs more effective and reflect the President's priorities. The department received 450 applications, which were due on October 2nd, 2017, for the 2017 Tiger Grant Program. It took us a while to process these applications because this is still a new program under the FAST Act, and these award announcements will be coming out very soon. The Infra Awards announcement will follow afterwards. So as noted earlier, eliminating unnecessary red tape will not only speed up the delivery of infrastructure projects, but it will also help pave the way for exciting new technology. As mentioned, a certain portion of the President's infrastructure proposal will focus on transformative technology. As you've heard, our country is on the cusp of a transportation revolution. New technologies could transform the way that we travel and connect with one another. Autonomous or self-driving vehicles, drones, and other transportation innovations have the potential to improve safety by addressing human error, which is a factor in 94% of traffic accidents. They can also help increase access to transportation for underserved communities, for example, the elderly and people with disabilities. Think about that. New technologies can give back to them their freedom, their mobility. But as you know, there are concerns also about these new technologies. 74% of Americans are kind of hesitant about using autonomous vehicles. And for policymakers, we need to be responsible when we issue regulations, we need to address legitimate concerns over these technologies regarding safety, security, and privacy. And so the department issued voluntary guidelines called Autonomous Vehicles 2.0, A Vision for Safety, last September 2017, which superseded the previous version, which was issued in September 2016. Technology is changing so rapidly that work is already underway on autonomous vehicles AV 3.0, which we hope to release as early as this summer. This new AV guidance will be multimodal and include various surface transportation systems, such as trucks, rails, and mass transit. So I'm going to show you a copy of AV 2.0. This is the 2.0 version of the voluntary guidelines on automated driving systems, which came out on September 2017. And the 3.0 version will be coming out, hopefully again, this summer. Drone technology is another new phenomenon. It's changing the aviation industry. Companies are increasingly interested in adopting drones for all kinds of commercial and humanitarian applications. On January 10th, 2018, a major milestone was reached when the 1 millionth drone was registered in the United States. And there's been a significant increase in a new job category, which did not exist 5 years ago. It's called a drone operator. There are now more than 75,000 registered commercial drone operators, and they're certified to conduct commercial operations. And that's why the department has launched a new drone pilot program that is like the infrastructure plan oriented to state and local governments. Because we have found that drones can be extraordinarily helpful in inspections, for example, during the hurricanes and the wildfires, natural disasters. Many operators wanted to survey what was going on. The federal government wanted to know what was going on. State and local governments wanted to know what was going on. But many of these sites were too dangerous. And so it was ideal to be able to send drones into these areas to examine, to snap pictures as to the real state of the crisis situation. But currently, our drone rules do not allow drones to fly over the heads of people or to allow drones to fly out of the line of sight. So we are experimenting with the drone pilot program to see how we can address these issues, which again will have great implications for overall safety. So the drone pilot program will accelerate the integration of unmanned aircrafts into our national airspace. By 2020, our national airspace will have over a billion travelers, passengers in the air. And that means a lot of airplanes. And so the key is how to integrate this increasing drone activity into this airspace, and that will be a great area of concern and study. The department's approach to innovation will be technology neutral. It will not be top-down. It will not be command and control. We believe that it's important for policymakers to partner with the states and local communities to foster an environment that promotes safety without hampering innovation, which is such an important part of the tradition, the hallmark of what America stands for. So this department and this administration looks forward to being partners with you in revitalizing and rebuilding our country's infrastructure and preparing for the future. Counties, or parishes if you're from Louisiana, are the fundamental units of our government from the earliest time of our country's history. By working together, we can rebuild and renew our country's infrastructure and help ensure that America's economy remains competitive and that we will continue to create good-paying jobs. Thanks so much. Welcome to Washington. We're delighted to have you here. Thank you so much. Thank you.